All right, welcome everybody back to an Almost Perfect podcast. Good to see you, to hear from you. So glad you're able to join us. I am John. That is our good friend Wade.
Hello.
And Brad is here with us this week.
Yeah.
And Tom, believe it or not, is MIA. I think he's only missed maybe one of these, before, maybe two before. I don't know, something like that.
More than I've missed. No, less than I've missed. I've missed more than he has.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have nothing else to do with my life, so I'm here every week.
I always look forward to Tom missing. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Sorry, Tom.
Sorry.
Now Tom is home and he's recuperating from a procedure, so we'll give him some slack this week.
We'll cut him some slack. Wish him well. I'm sure he'll be back next week. Very good. So, how was your weekend, gentlemen?
Oh, good.
It was good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nothing out of the ordinary, huh?
Mm-mm.
I was cleaning for a company that was coming for Thanksgiving, but they're not coming. So now I have a clean house. So
Hey, good for you.
Yeah.
Listen, I if you still want to, just saying, I know this place that could use some more cleaning. Anyway, I brought my son home from college this weekend. He's staying with me for a couple more days, and he is actually in the next room doing his online classes. I think he's taking Japanese. I'm not sure.
Wow.
I don't understand any of it. So yeah,
It's all Japanese to me, right?
it really is. Just a lot of, it looks like chicken scratch, doctor's writing or something.
I saw, one time, somebody said, I wonder if people in Japan, do they walk around with just random English words tattooed on their arms, bread, right? Or
Rice Krispies,
Yes. Our children, let's see, our oldest, she's finishing up her semester soon. And then I think they don't go back after Thanksgiving. So
Oh,
the other
wow.
one who's in Kingsville, she'll come home on Wednesday and that'll be it. She'll finish everything else online. So
There you go.
and we'll see if they go back in January. I don't know.
Yeah.
So anyway, did you see that something happened in Corpus Christi that's never happened before?
No.
Do you know what the PBR is?
Yeah.
Oh, I did see that. Yeah.
PBR, professional bull riding.
That was super cool. It was on yesterday.
It was on
I missed
yesterday.
it. What happened?
I didn't get to watch it. So there was bull riding on the Lexington, man.
Oh, I did see about that. I didn't get to see it, but yeah, I heard about that. That's pretty cool.
That's kind
If you got bucked off, the fall was a lot worse.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hey, but you landed in the water, so it's okay.
Yeah, you didn't see how far off to the edge that they did the,
Right.
what do they call that? The arena? What do they call that? It's not a field. I don't know.
I don't know.
You run
Stable?
the stable.
Danger? I don't know.
You're getting ready for Christmas. Good for you, Wade. Very good. Getting a head start. Yeah, I thought it was kind of neat. I mean,
that sounded
weird.
cool.
I don't usually watch professional.
And it was for
bull
charity.
riding. It was for charity. Let's see.
okay.
It was the Cowboys for a Cause.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know how much money they raised or whatever. But anyway, a bull riding event hosted on top of the Lexington. I was watching the weather last week. Bill Vesey did the Lex Cam, whatever. And you saw these bulldozers putting sand. Right. And he even said it. And I thought the same thing, like, what are they doing?
Yeah,
Lexington? Right. And so there it was. So
it was hundred. I watched yesterday and I heard numbers of hundreds of thousands of dollars. So
is that right?
Pretty big deal.
So that is what my church is missing. Then we need to, Kelsey people, we need to get our act together and start riding bulls.
Let's get a rodeo going, man.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Yeah. Now
I'm gonna probably be the roper. I won't be riding bulls. I'm good.
I'm good being the clown.
This is true. This is quite true.
I want to do the mutton busting. That's what I want to do.
Yeah, I see. For each qualified ride, Ford pledged $25,000 to their 7 Proud to Honor charities, total of $200,000. Additionally, $25,000 was donated to Operation Homefront by Wrangler, and $25,000 from Bad Boy Mowers to Operation Homefront. So obviously, military theme and helping veterans and things like that. So yeah, it's good deal. So kind of cool, but also a good way to get bulls on the Lexington. There is a follow-up story we need to talk about.
Okay.
Do you guys know Ezekiel Mitchell?
No.
Professional bull rider.
Uh-uh.
Guys, call yourself fans.
I
Anyway,
know, right?
professional bull rider has bags stolen from a Holiday Inn in Corpus Christi a day before the PBR event aboard the USS Lexington. So a guy comes to ride bulls for charity in Corpus Christi, and somebody steals his bag, man.
That is a bunch of bull.
Yeah. Sure hope it wasn't his saddle or his boots. Yeah, that's not good, man. That's not good. That black eye to Corpus Christi here.
What do they say online? Your corpus is showing.
Yeah, yeah. That's right.
What is in a bull rider's bag, by the way?
I don't know.
I don't know.
We really don't know, you know.
Scared to guess.
We really don't
I don't know.
Clean socks? I don't know. Clean underwear? I don't
Yeah, yeah.
How many Holiday Inns are there in Corpus?
know. Well, I imagine
2, right?
I know there's one on
There's one on SBID.
one on Shoreline.
Shoreline, and then there's one off of is that
Somebody get a phone book.
close to the what is it? Not Mesquite.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, way out there.
Way out there, yeah. So it's at least 3. I don't know where he was, but poor guy. We went to Arkansas one year, Little Rock, and we checked into the hotel, and we think we were there for a wedding, and we're out and about and came in. As we were coming in the hallway, I remember as a younger guy passed us, and I'm not even thinking anything of it. And then we got to the door, and I noticed the door was like that much open. I thought, weird. What did I forget? And so anyway, somebody tried to break into our hotel room once, at least that I know of. I think in retrospect, the way that kind of passing happened, I think the kid was the one who was trying, and I happened to walk in at the right time to stop him. So anyway, so sorry to Mr. Ezekiel Mitchell. Not all of us would steal your bag, your bull rider bag. We respect bull rider bags around here in these parts. So
yeah, that's right.
Anyway,
Or any other kind of bag for that reason.
That's right. It's any other bag. We're not gonna steal anybody's bag if we have to. Why do tigers have stripes? Do you guys know why?
Because they don't like 7-Eleven.
If they had spots, they'd be leopards. I don't know.
Speaking of stripes, Messalina Cup, so I get it every year.
All right.
All right.
Anyway, yes, I was reading this. I thought this is interesting. And then I got to looking like this website, like, oh, they wrote this for kids. Here I was all intrigued. I guess I never thought about it. Why do tigers have stripes? It's for camouflage and blah, blah, blah. And I did learn that, where's it at here? They're helped by the limited vision of their preferred prey. Deer and other hoofed animals can't see the full range of colors, much like a colorblind human. So they have a picture here of a tiger kind of walking past, the brush. You see the orange and stripes that we're used to. And then right next to it, they got, what's the tiger from He-Man?
I don't know, dude. That's
the only thing I know from He-Man is He-Man, so I couldn't tell you.
Oh, his tiger. I forget his tiger's name. Anyway, it's a green tiger. So anyway, that's kind of what deer see. And so the stripes, anyway, I found it interesting. And I am not humbled at all by the fact that this was a children's article.
Yeah.
That was not, it was.
I'm just happy we've moved into the meat of our discussion today.
Absolutely. I thought it was to make them, look like they would go faster. That's why we put stripes on our cars, right?
Right.
That's only if you go the other way. If you go horizontal, it makes it look like they're flowing. Yeah. So, okay, Wade, what is the meat of our conversation today?
I thought that was it. I was being serious.
So speaking of the meat of our conversation, then I sent the boys here a few articles. And I was mentioned before we went on air. Look at us, all professional. Cut it out. So a few weeks ago, we talked about the wedding in New York City, or actually in Brooklyn, 10,000 person wedding. Which, Brad, you explained to us. What did you say before you jetted off about a 10,000 person wedding?
Oh, was that polygamy or what?
Sorry.
How many were actually getting married there?
That was a good one,
Okay.
Brad. That's why I wanted to give you a chance to, reprise it. Anyway,
Okay.
so that obviously in time of pandemic, that went against protocol for communities, in particular communities where this is, where they've seen the infection rates go high and things like that. So anyway, so the wedding was canceled. So we thought, but word is that it actually did happen. There weren't 10,000 people though, just a meager 7,000 people in attendance at the wedding at a synagogue. And so here's the headline: How Orthodox Rabbi Ignored New York Governor's Call to Cancel 7,000 person synagogue wedding and held it in secret by only using word of mouth. So yeah. Once we found out that you can't have 10,000 people come together, they canceled it, but stopped giving invitations, stopped sharing it on Facebook, I guess, and just word of mouth.
Studies have shown that inviting people by word of mouth reduces the number of people coming by about 30%.
Is that accurate?
It was in that case, yeah.
Oftentimes we try to tell our church people, invite somebody, word of mouth, and here they use it for purposes that might get them in trouble. This article I read is there's no sense right now of there'll be any kind of repercussions or anything they have to deal with. But anyway, so I had that article, and then someone in a group I'm part of sent another article entitled "A Plea to Our Churches." And this is from the Christian Medical and Dental Associations, Changing Hearts in Healthcare. I hadn't heard of them before this morning. But anyway, they wrote a short little article. And I'll give you the summation of it. As an association of Christian healthcare professionals, CMDA urgently requests that churches strongly consider taking their services online and cancel in-person gatherings until this current surge of COVID-19 cases passes. It is about love, not fear. And so the premise is, this is a very serious situation, obviously. And from the healthcare perspective, what this article talks about is, the healthcare workers who are actually getting the virus, they aren't getting it from work. They're actually getting it from family who've been out and about, or from church events or things like that. And so, the idea that that canceling in-person worship is a way to take care of more people. Was that a part of your conversation in your churches when you made those decisions, or was it more practical than that?
We were more interested in the practical aspects, I believe. We were talking about just the demographics of our church were mostly folks who were elderly or had health reasons that were underlying that the risk of the infection was going to be too great for them. And so we decided at the time when we canceled services that we just need to be thinking about who all is in our church. So maybe that is love. We were taking care of our own, but we were also thinking about those folks that we would encounter outside. We had an incident this past, 2 weeks ago now. It'll be 2 weeks on Wednesday, when we had our food pantry delivery system. We had one of our workers was diagnosed or had been, the case was confirmed. He didn't know about it at the time, but his wife had come down with coronavirus, and he got tested, and the first test came back negative, and the second one came back positive, and which was about 3 days later after the food bank or food pantry distribution. And so we managed to have to call all of our volunteers as well as everyone who received food. That's that kind of thing that we're trying to really stem, I guess, is to have not happen. And so this past Sunday in worship, we asked everybody to sign in and not sign in physically, but send us an email to let us know that they were there in worship, so that should that happen again, we have a way of contacting everybody. And when you put it in those terms, it's about the safety, but it's also about the care and concern for one another. And I think that, yeah, that does come about as a means of loving one another, not so much about fear.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Well,
I
you
think
guys
when
wait.
we initially shut down worship, in-person worship, I think the biggest thing was the same thing Brad's talking about. Just taking care of people that are that are susceptible.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't very long after that we started getting some push about, hey, we got to get back together. And then I began talking about, well, I'd really been talking about it before then, but I talked about it more forcefully about, hey, this is about loving our neighbor, and not only our neighbor who might be infected, but our healthcare workers who have enough to deal with without us adding to the cases. So, we started in-person worship again at the beginning of November, and I thought that we could maybe phase in a little bit more, different kinds of gatherings, and now I'm kind of going, I don't know what we're gonna see here in the next few weeks. I think we're just gonna stand pat for a little while and see what happens. And that's going to be unpopular in some ways because it's Advent coming up and Christmas isn't far behind that, and and I think the overriding thing that church leaders have to balance is, what is it, to me, this isn't about being fearful or having a lack of faith. It's about loving our neighbor in the best way that we can, and we can worship online. I know people don't prefer that, but we can do that, and it is not critical to the well-being of the church that they're in the same spot every Sunday for an hour. It's we talk about this all the time when we're meeting all the time. Sunday's great, but if we don't go out and do it Monday through Saturday, what's the point? Well, I mean,
Here we are.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was part of our conversation as well. Is we have that population, several people in that population that you need to be mindful of, teachers and some healthcare workers as well. But we also said, we want to kind of be an example to the community as well, that we were willing to do this to help our community. So we were taking care of each other, but we were also helping our community. And so there's that idea, which I think, a lot of people, I think, understand. But then you juxtapose that with another article. Now, this is out of the UK, so I want to make sure that's we understand that. But I think the idea is still something that you can feel here in the States as well. So that first article was a plea to the churches. The second one is, let us disobey. Churches defy lockdown with secret meetings. And so there's too much to go through. But essentially, in the UK, they have restrictions about, gatherings and things like that would include the church, based on size and whatnot. And so what some churches have resorted to doing is still meet, but meet in secret.
Underground, yeah.
Underground. Well, that's interesting to say that, because one of the pastors that they interview here, that they quote, he says, where's it at? It feels weird for us to act this way. People have said it feels more like an underground church in China.
Yeah.
The fact that we have to sneak around to worship God in fear of criminal prosecution is alarming, but we do what we have to do.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you hold those two ideas, right? Loving neighbor, serving the community, but by God, we need to meet, and if we need to meet in secret and private, we're going to do that. How do you hold those two ideas, and where is the merit maybe in both of those? How do you wrestle with these kind of conversations that the church is having, right, as we speak?
Well, I think the first thing is we have to before we answer that, we got to admit that we don't live in those circumstances here in the United States. At least not in Texas. We haven't been asked to stop meeting.
Right.
And in England, they are under a pretty strict lockdown. And so, however, if I was in England and I was leading a church, I think one of the places I would go, well, both places I would go, love your neighbors yourself. This is about the greater good. And, if you want to be scriptural, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. And right now, Caesar's, the government, and they are trying to do the best they can to stem the tide of infection. So I think I would probably disagree pretty heavily with this guy. This is not what you have to do. There are other alternatives. To me, this becomes about pride and making the worship service an idol, whereas, we don't worship a worship service. We worship God, and we can do that in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think.
I think you're right. I think that's a big part of what we struggle with, and I have to give credence though to to a growing movement, if you will, that this article from the Guardian, really does push, is that there's some folks who are really trying to just hold their ground. Dadgummit, this is my church, and I want to do what I want to do, and I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. And while I understand those feelings,
Brad, I'm sorry.
Yes,
you
sir?
do that impression very well. I
Well,
just want to
That's
say
great.
that. I'm sorry.
I growed up there. You know what I'm talking about?
Please continue.
No, and so there, that emotion and that feeling behind that is legitimate. It comes from a prideful state of mind, and I'm not saying that good or bad. It's prideful. We have pride in the fact that we can worship however we want to worship, and we worship the way we want to worship. But I think, when we go with it from that perspective only, we take away the idea that exactly what you're saying, Wade, that we forget that this isn't about us, and it's not about us feeling comfortable in our pews and doing what we want to do and self-determination and stuff. But that we forget that we are called to love the other, and whether the other is worthy of being loved or not. And I think you're right. I think there's opportunities for us to express that worship in a whole lot of different ways. Now, I think if we started experiencing here where I know they experience it in other countries and other places around the world, where online worship suddenly becomes squelched, then I think we have another issue.
For sure.
Because I think that is a true persecution when you start shutting down worship, period. Not online, not on air, not anywhere else, and especially not in person. That's another issue altogether, and that's not COVID related. That's a different kind of persecution. So I agree. We managed to worship online. I think Tom said it best when we talked about this several months ago or a couple months ago. He says, there's some folks that in his church said, I just can't wait for us to get back to real worship. And he said, but online worship, I still feel like I'm really worshiping God, and I feel like I'm really in worship, even though I'm not sitting elbow to elbow with my pew mates. I'm still in contact with God in this. And I think that's one of the things we need to not lose sight of, is the fact that worship is not about where we are and how we worship and what music we sing and who we can sit next to. But worship is really about surrendering ourselves to the love and glory of God and glorifying God in that. So, and if that means that I need to put up with some things that I don't really want to put up with for the sake of another, I think that's part of what the gospel is all about, right? Loving others as you love yourselves. I think that's what you said, John. So
I think the key word that Brad said there is surrender.
Exactly.
And we don't like that, do we?
No, dadgummit.
We don't want to surrender. Yeah, we have a hard time. Surrendering to God sounds nice, but I think we have a hard time with that. Surrendering to each other is even, to forget that. And Brad, you kind of touched a little bit. And I guess that's, if I find myself agreeing with you all, but I also want to kind of talk to those who might feel like, no, what was the technical term? Dadgummit?
Dadgummit?
Okay.
You got to say it mad too, which are
can we require Brad to just be that character for the rest of our podcast?
Yes.
You betcha. Mm-hmm. For sure.
But what about? And of course, we're coming from a Christian perspective, but this as we talked about with the Jewish synagogue, right, outside of New York, this has a merit for every religious group. What about the fears of government overreach? Where's the line there, right? When do you feel like, wait a minute, government, you're in too much with us?
Time out, right?
Where's that line at for you guys?
Well, I mean, this may be a completely different conversation.
Yeah.
I think the metaphor that the guy sets up in the article about the British church, where he says feels like an underground church in China. I'm like, well, no, it doesn't, because an underground church in China is there's nothing happening that the government doesn't want to squelch. And the government here, in my estimation, it hasn't been about squelching worship. That is not on the agenda. What's on the agenda is squelching in-person gatherings that can spread this virus until we can get not just care protocols in place, but some of these vaccines out and begin to kind of stem the tide of spread, which is clearly exploding like it has not at all throughout this whole thing.
Yeah, the second wave has been huge.
So I don't. I think that to put forth that this is some sort of infringement on my constitutional right to worship as I want to worship, or to be religious in the way that I want to be religious, isn't a thing. It's just not. I think, and people will disagree with me, and I know they're out there, and that's fine. You don't have to agree with me or anybody else. But if you ask me the question, I think if in-person worship on Sunday morning is the thing that defines your faith more than anything else, we haven't taught you well.
Yeah, you have an Oedipus complex, or an edifice complex, more than anything else. You're more interested in the building than you are anything else. I think it parallels, and even in the parallel, there's always going to be little differences and stuff, but and things where the analogy doesn't quite match up. But the closest analogy I can have in this, or I can come up with in this, is that freedom of speech and yelling fire in a movie theater. Are we talking about freedom of worship being squelched completely, as it would be in places like China or in other places? And Nepal, for instance, is another place where Christian worship is absolutely outlawed. And if there are churches there, they're underground. But that's a whole different ballgame than it is to say, well, you can still worship, but we're going to do parking lot worship, where you're in your car and you're listening on an AM radio transmitter or whatever, or we're going to do online worship, virtual live stream type stuff. And I don't think that is the same as saying you can't do that. Like you can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater. I think that's the fine line that we want to cross, or we want to identify. And I don't think it's the same line for Christianity or for churches or for religion in any situation. When we start saying that you cannot worship at all, that's the line that gets crossed.
And Wade, you brought up something that it's actually, you both tied it in when Brad said we had a edifice complex, and Wade, you said that we haven't taught you well. I think when you say we, you mean pastors, right?
Yeah.
And I think one of the acknowledgments we have to have as pastors is that sometimes, those big Sunday mornings, they mean a lot to us. means we're doing a good job, right? Means people come to hear me preach, means, I can tell the DS and the bishop that everything's cool over here and I'm ready for the next, good appointment. And, we have to be honest about, what these kind of big gatherings might mean to us as well, which you're right, is a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the point being is, sometimes these gatherings mean something to us preachers that it shouldn't. And sometimes these gatherings mean something to the rest of the church that maybe they shouldn't as well. And that's kind of, for me, that's been one of the biggest takeaways from this whole COVID experience is that I'm going to affirm what you said. We haven't taught the church well, right?
No, we haven't.
For all the talk of, Monday through Saturday, that being the main thing, we've just sort of made Sunday so central to the faith that's like all the other stuff really kind of doesn't matter. We've got to keep people coming back.
Yeah.
I think,
and Brad talked about the edifice complex, and I think what I have observed as we have re-entered worshiping together in our building is, as much as anything, it's about being together with people that you care about. And the community aspect of that has been probably what I see the most in people, that they just like they've been isolated for a long time and they really appreciate being together. And so, you can't really criticize that sensibility and that need. But again, I want to, the question that I sort of ask myself when nobody's around, and these discussions happen and people say, when are we going to, and we really need to do this. And the question that I ask myself, and I've never said out loud to anybody else, is who's going to have to get sick and die for us to think differently about this? And not that I would want that at all, but I just know that if we push the boundaries, and that were to happen, we would all feel like it was a pretty small thing for us to do.
Yeah.
In retrospect.
Yeah.
And that's a balancing act. I get that, but
I think, and Wade, you're exactly right. One of the things that I always hear in this is that I miss being with my folks. I miss being with my family, my church family, my friends.
Which we love to hear that, right?
Absolutely, we do. That means that we're doing something right, which is good.
Yeah.
Except what we have become so accustomed to in the last, several generations is this passive contact. And I don't know what else to call it, but that we've become very passive in our conduct. Well, I'll just wait till Sunday and I'll say hi to them and so and second and see how they're doing. Instead, now we need to do it a little bit more actively. We need to be proactive in reaching out to one another on the phone, email, texting, whatever it is, so that we can stay in contact with our friends. We just don't need to be there face to face and do the huggy, kissy thing. And I think that's the new step that maybe this is what we're being taught, is that church is really about taking care of each other. I remember when Sunday school classrooms, when they do attendance, and they would go, well, where is so-and-so? I thought they was, well, I don't know. I thought, well, was somebody going, all right, somebody's got to have to check on them to find out where they are. Well, they were out of town last week, so maybe they're still out of town. Somebody still needs to check up on them. And that became an active contact where people would take care of each other by checking in on each other. If somebody missed 2 weeks in a row, there's something wrong, and somebody needs to contact them. Who's going to do that? And you don't leave the class until those things are decided and somebody does. And then the next week they report back, or else that person shows up again. And at the same time, I know that my role in this, and exactly what you're talking about, and exactly what you're talking about there, John, with with what's really on me and my ego about being here. I don't know about y'all, but I really struggled with Easter this past spring, doing it all virtual. I missed seeing people. I missed having that feedback of telling people, about the tomb is empty. And the thought of me doing worship or leading worship again, virtually only for Christmas, breaks my heart. But I'm also dealing with the fact that that's about me and not about what we're talking about as far as loving one another and taking care of each other. And so I'm having to grapple with that and struggle with that personally. And I'm hoping that I can work my way through that without causing anybody any pain. And I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want anybody to die in my church, just to be able to prove the point that we need to be taking care of each other.
And the challenging thing for me and all of that, Brad, is that when I feel that way, it's easy to find affirmation for that feeling, and so it almost seems like, seems, there's a sense in which, oh, well, then it's a good decision. And it may or may not be a good decision, but we're all kind of, especially in this particular circumstance, we're all kind of we're all coming from sort of the same place where we want this, and we live in a culture and a time where if we want it, we get it.
Immediate gratification.
Oh man, just a reminder that there are so many facets to this conversation, right? As far as the impact of COVID and pandemic and isolation and everything. There's so many things to consider and think about. Brad, when you're talking about, the way you're feeling about not meeting for Easter and Christmas, I was thinking is, when we went back to in person, now there's like maybe 30 people in the sanctuary, and it's like I'm talking to my people, more than half of them, I don't know if they're there or not when I'm doing so, and that's just, it's talking about that connection that Wade was talking about before. That's a hard part of it, but but even that's a different side of the conversation, right? It's all kind of it's a mess, man. Can we just say it's a mess?
It is. And it's unlike anything else we've ever had to deal with. I mean, at least in my generation, and I think that's the struggle is, am I doing this right? Are we, I don't know. I'm swinging in the dark here. I don't have any idea, just trying to figure it out and asking for divine guidance, and God is going, keep going, keep going. You're doing all right.
I've been spending a lot of time in Psalms of lament and in thinking through the process of lament, and understanding that, we're in this period of disorientation right now, and pretty soon we'll be in this period of some sort of reorientation. But at the end of all of that, if you read all of those those Psalms of lament, there's hope in a future. And if we believe what we say we believe, and what the church teaches, and what Jesus has taught us, and what we know, we should believe that anyway. And we ought to, I don't know about you guys, but often I'll sheepishly look at myself and go, you ought to be better. You ought to be a little bit better at believing that there's hope in the future, and that you don't have to make it happen.
Right.
It happens when it happens.
Well, I think the other thing is, you're exactly right. That lamentation concept in the Psalms is, we have to own the fact that we feel this way. That here we are, to deny it is, I think, to live in a false understanding of what's going on around us. And, it's hard for us to sing songs of Zion in a foreign land. And this feels like a foreign land to us, because nothing around us looks normal or looks like what we're used to, but we still have to sing. We still need to sing, because our soul cries out to sing to God.
Amen.
That's right. It's been several years that we do the longest night.
Yeah, exactly.
And that, I've done that now for about 6 or 7 years, and that has turned into one of those meaningful times that I anticipate. And as much as I've been thinking about Christmas Eve over the last, month or so, I've actually been thinking about that longest night, because I think this is going to be a time that more people might want that to be a part of what they do, because we've all experienced loss in some way, right? Loss in connection. Some of us experience, loss of life as a result of the virus and other things. And so with all that loss, exactly what you just said, we've still got to cry out. We've still got to worship. We've still got a song to sing, because that's what God puts into our heart. Amen.
Amen.
And at the same time, there's bull riding happening on the Lexington. So there's always something to, bring a little joy here and there. Right.
And a secret wedding of 7,000 people.
Yeah. Imagine that. Imagine that. I was wanting us to talk a little bit about, the witness of the church, tie that whole conversation with the witness, but you guys did such a good job. I think we ran out of time, that we have much time to talk about the witness, but I feel like we did, just not in, direct terms. So
it is the witness of the church.
It is. Yeah. And so maybe we'll save that larger conversation for another week about, what it means to be a witness and blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah. All right, give me a final word, guys. Anything you want to leave everybody with?
Sing what's in your heart. Sing what's in your heart.
Amen.
There is hope in the future.
Yeah.
Amen. There is always hope. And there is always hope that one day we'll be perfect. In the meantime, guys, that was almost perfect. Good job. I appreciate it. Almost.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you everybody for listening. Have no fear. There's hope that we will be back next week, and we'll be here to talk about, whatever we decide to talk about right before the show starts. And we hope you can join us. If there's anything you want us to talk about that you think we could help offer a Christ-like response, let us know. Check out the Facebook page. Check out the website, almostperfect.com. almostperfectpodcast.com, I think. And until then, have a great rest of the week. Wade, Brad, I appreciate your time, and thank you so much for your insight. You guys should keep doing what you're doing, man.
You're on. You too.
All right.
You too.
All right. God be with you.
And you too. God bless.